That Naturopathic Podcast. TNP.
Hello there.
Hi, and thanks for joining us. I'm Dr. Michelle Pobega, naturopathic doctor.
And I'm Dr. David Miller, ND, and we hear your frustrations. This show is for you.
This show is for you if you're feeling like your current healthcare strategy is not getting to the root cause or the underlying reasons for your health.
This show is for you if you've been told that you're fine, but you definitely don't feel very well.
This show is for you if you're walking out of your doctor's office with 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 5 medications without any mention of diet, lifestyle, or a long-term game plan.
This show is for you if you've got several specialists taking care of you, but no one is really putting all the pieces together.
This show is for you if you believe that health should be part of healthcare. These problems have solutions.
We know it.
Our patients know it.
And we want you to know it.
Naturopathic medicine is the solution that you should know about.
Welcome to another episode of That Naturopathic Podcast. Dr. David Miller, ND, here with Dr. Michelle Pobega, ND. What's up?
Together again. We've had a few solo episodes, but we're back. The team is back.
Yeah, real life kicked in a little bit.
Yeah,
But yeah, it does, and it always will. And
yeah,
anyway.
and that's that, and sometimes you lose sleep over that stuff and sometimes you don't. And that's my segue into melatonin.
Great transition into talking about melatonin again. Wow.
So
Michelle.
For all of our listeners, we did an episode a few episodes back about melatonin, and a lot of us can recognize its effect on sleep. But Dave and I today wanted to highlight the effects of melatonin on other areas of health, that it's not just a sleep aid. And there is a lot in studies that demonstrates that other organs outside of the pineal gland, like the retina, or bone marrow, or even bile, there's like a huge amount of high concentrations of melatonin found in those particular organs. And there seems to be receptor sites and production elsewhere, not just in the pineal gland. So this is more multifactorial, and it's more than just your sleep-wake cycle. Although when I was reading stuff about immune system and whatever, a part of me wonders if, a lot of repair happens when we're sleeping. So maybe that's also why it shines about the immune system, is that it really maximizes its efforts while we're at rest, which is also just another big push to like optimize quality sleep and your 24-hour clock and your circadian rhythms. But we'll get into the details about the immune system in a bit.
You know what though? I'm just gonna reiterate I think how important that bit is that you just said about, if you are a person, or if there is a certain person with a compromise in sleep, which is aided to some degree by melatonin, which is not everyone, but if there is a person whose sleep quality will be aided by melatonin, we will therefore see pretty much every index of health improve in some predictably unpredictable manner. And probably helping different systems and different people differentially, but still you're going to see a non-specific improvement in everything when you sleep better. So I think it's really important what you said there. Like maybe some of this is confounded by just improved sleep.
I can attest personally that earlier, like my red blood cells can sometimes teeter on the lower end, because sometimes I can have a little bit of anemic state, and sometimes my immune system fluctuates, and I have historically had a very challenging times with sleep. And then more recently, at the beginning of the year, my immune system was fine. And then April and May, I don't know what happened, but my sleep was bonkers. I was maybe getting 4 to 5 hours. I was waking a lot, having a hard time falling asleep if I woke up. And then I ended up getting some blood work shortly after that, and my white blood cell count was in the trash. So I mean, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I imagine it played a massive role because I wasn't in repair mode. So then my immune system just depleted. Right. So anyways, just a little
personal touch there. No, it's important. That's where we learn a lot of things in a way better way with patients or ourselves. But another thing that you brought up, and I'm just going to reiterate how important that is too, is that extra pineal, meaning like anything beyond the pineal gland. I mean, that's where we thought all the melatonin was, but turns out somewhere between hundreds or upwards of maybe 1,000 times more melatonin is going to be found in the gut. and that was not something that I wasn't expecting that. Melatonin is also synthesized in bacteria, plants. So like this is not
Crazy.
just a human. I mean, that begs, if you're, real deep thinker, you're gonna think this is not just to do with like sleep.
No.
And it's very clear from its many sort of facets of impact on physiology, which I think I'll get you to go through those more, Michelle, because you did a I think a more of a broad evaluation of its use, many different uses in clinical applications. So maybe it's a good transition for you to go into talk a little bit
Yeah.
of some of the
Well,
other areas in which it's been studied, or perspectives on melatonin beyond sleep.
I mean, it's phenomenal apparently for the immune system. So just as like a little something, we have something called our adaptive immune system, and then that's branched into our humoral immune system, which is like antibodies and B cells, our cellular immune, which is like T cell immunity, and a little bit of like CD4s, CD8s, as well as like natural killer cells. And then we have something called our innate immunity. So that's what like just naturally just is there. So this is where like when you get a white blood cell count on your lab work and you see other, then it says differentials and it says neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils. That's part of our innate immunity, which is just and there and ready, and it's macrophages to eat up bacteria and to do this, where the adaptive immunity is something that develops as we get exposed to different things, and then it gets stronger with different exposures. It's also connected with allergies and immune systems when the adaptive immunity kind of goes wrong. So just as a little FYI, that's how it's kind of broken up as we get into the immune talk, because immune stuff can get very complicated. And I even had to review this, right? But there has been some really interesting research. So in 1986, this Mastroni and colleagues did some research that first showed that when you inhibit melatonin synthesis, it also caused an inhibition of the cellular and humoral, so that adaptive branch of the immune system in mice. And mice would exhibit an inability to mount a primary antibody response. They also had decreased cellularity in the thymus and spleen. And the thymus is primarily where we're getting like lymphocytes and T cells produced. And we get depressed lymphocyte reactivity, which is lymphocytes are really important for like viral responses. And these were all reversed when melatonin was administered back into these mice in the late afternoon. And it looked like late afternoon injection of melatonin really increased both the primary and secondary antibody responses. And I think that may have been one of the more preliminary efforts of looking into the effects of melatonin beyond sleep. But that was 1986 where they started to discover this. And since then, we've started to identify even more specifics about how the immune system gets affected by the melatonin. So melatonin will stimulate the production of granulocytes and macrophages, and granulocytes basically get broken down into our neutrophils, our eosinophils, and our basophils, which are all really important parts of our immune system. Our neutrophils are basically our first line of defense for any kind of infection. Basophils will also help with responding to allergies and inflammation in the body, and they help recruit other immune cells to a source of an allergy. And then eosinophils are a really big part of managing chronic inflammation, allergy responses, but also parasitic inflammation or infections, pardon me. So it does have a huge part with helping the production of the granulocytes that makes those, and then also macrophages, which basically gobble up microbes and like dead cells and pathogens and stuff. And it also has a general stimulating effect on hemopoiesis. So basically like blood cell production. Exogenous melatonin, so taking it externally and adding it into the system, will also improve NK cells, which are called natural killer cells, which are really important with like cancer care. Am I not right with that, Dave? Cancer care, and
Which
also
ones?
just like natural killer cells and abnormal cellular growth, apoptosis, so the killing off of cells that are unhealthy, abnormal, damaged, etc. And it also helps with monocytes in the bone marrow and in the spleen. So this could also be effective for like stopping any kind of neoplastic growths and for also destroying viral infections. Melatonin has been proposed to regulate the immune system by also affecting cytokine production. So in immunocompetent cells. So cytokines are part of our inflammatory response, and a certain level of inflammation is important for the immune system, for the immune system's effects. So it does affect cytokine production. There has been also some studies showing that when you administer melatonin in like more of the elderly, where thymus cells there's been a severe loss of thymus cells as with the aging process, melatonin administration would then increase the total number of thymocytes in, say, old mice. And again, the thymus is responsible for like lymphocytes and T cell production, and it's a big part of our immune system. And also it's been found that melatonin also helps the stimulation of like glutathione, which has immunoenhancing effects as well, and supports immune response, inflammatory response, antioxidant repair. So there's some really cool stuff with that, but it works on CD4 cells. It can increase the production of natural killer cells in CD4 cells, but it can also inhibit CD8 cells. So this is the part of our adaptive immunity that will be important for autoimmune conditions and stuff. So there was also some research shown for there's some interesting insights and studies looking at the use of melatonin for autoimmune diseases because of its ability to regulate that humoral and cellular branch of the immune system. And treatment with melatonin would directly interfere with T cell differentiation and controls the balance between pathogenic and regulatory T cells, which then also helps regulate inflammatory cytokine release. So this is where the support on an autoimmune condition could be helpful, because in an autoimmune condition, it's like there's an imbalance of that, and then the immune system is now, for lack of better phrasing, kind of like attacking the body because of this imbalanced immune response. So melatonin might play a role. I think there needs to be some more investigation in that, but it might play a role with its ability to regulate those T cells and reducing inflammation. So that's kind of cool, because a lot of people have autoimmune conditions these days. And it just feels like everybody has either allergies or autoimmune conditions.
Yeah, they're rampant. I mean, it has to do with immune balance, right?
Exactly.
And that's what you're saying. It seems to
immunomodulatory, right? Yeah. So not only can it increase,
and definitely cancer.
cells,
there was a lot of research on cancer, right?
I didn't look into the cancer stuff, but there was some stuff related to its antioxidant effects for cancer care. So there was an article that said that it indicated that melatonin can render treatment-resistant cancers more sensitive to various therapeutic agents when used in conjunction with that. So that was kind of interesting, but that's the only blurb that I saw within my look, because I wasn't looking specifically for its effects in cancer. Just immune in general.
Yeah, and I think that's the link is probably if you optimize immune, like, I mean, cancer is a disease of the immune system in effect, or at least a major component of it is that. So again, we're talking big systems here, you know, we're talking sleep, we're talking neuroimmune. So yeah, the specifics that are all sort of downstream from those are going to be changed, but
even its effect on NK cells alone is going to have an effect on cancer because of apoptosis and neoplastic like, you know, growth. But the antioxidant effect as well with improving like treatment resistant cancers is really awesome. But again, like, I didn't go beyond that.
I think another node of research, or like one of the main areas of research, which is what I focused on, guess what, was the stomach and the gut. And that was pretty interesting, because I mean, on the whole, the evidence looks pretty solid that it, like, exogenous or like oral melatonin is very helpful for specifically upper GI conditions, like upper stomach, pancreas. And pancreas, and there's not much you can do for pancreas, so it's nice when you have something you can do for it. And it looks like melatonin, the
pancreas is a hard one. Totally,
it's weak, and it's hard to jack it up a bit. So And then H. pylori, there's implications for H. pylori. There's implications for the role of melatonin enclosure of the pylorus.
Cool.
Another interesting thing was that melatonin is structurally similar. Now, I'm not looking at this the 3D structures, but I was just reading some studies. It's structurally similar to a proton pump inhibitor. It's
No
very
way.
interesting. Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
it seems to have a postprandial, so after eating, acid lowering effect in general, possibly through impacting the pancreas. This is maybe how it helps the pancreas to make bicarbonate postprandially. So you want your acid, high and good while you're eating. But right after, when it's time to sort of shut it down after coming out of the pylorus, the lower part of the stomach, we have to buffer it with bicarbonate from the pancreas. And it seems to be generally an increase in melatonin postprandially associated with maybe helping people with symptoms of hyperacidity, maybe more so in the duodenum or the small intestine. So that it's, I'll be honest here, I'm not entirely clear on when I'm going to use melatonin, in terms of how to use it for gastrointestinal issues, but it looks like it will be part of what I do at some point. I just have to figure out when, because what I wasn't really happy with in looking over the studies for about an hour was when people take it and how much they take. And I think, Michelle, these will be hugely important details.
Those are the things I didn't see. The only things I did see was that when they were doing stuff for the immune system, and it might have even been for its antioxidants effects, which I'll get into in a little bit, it was more like in the afternoon. A lot of dosages for the immune system articles seem to be like afternoon dosing. So it's
afternoon,
not
meaning like before dinner time, before supper time.
like I think like they said afternoon, and I think it was like 1600 hours. I think they mentioned in one article, so 4:00. Which was interesting too. So I wonder if because of that, it would maybe be redirected for other efforts rather than for sleep induction. I'm not sure, but again, the timing of that's something I did not look into more deeply. And
another interesting fact that may color how I look at further research, because what I think we're going to do here is we've signed up for part 2 of melatonin. I think we'll sign up for part 3 later on when we learn more.
There's also some stuff apparently about neurodegeneration, cognitive function that I haven't even looked at yet, which would probably be really cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I was looking at melatonin as the cornerstone of neuroimmunoendocrinology. That's a 2022 paper. So
nice and recent.
Yeah. Too. So what I wonder though is if we just go back to, sometimes it's good to go back to our basic science and realize melatonin is receptor. There's receptors for melatonin, but it also has paracrine effects. So this may be why, and this is news to me, so I hope it's news to some of you. Maybe some of the reason it has more local sort of cognitive somnolence, sleep inducing issues when it's released in the pineal gland is that it's probably acting locally, paracrine, and not necessarily going systemic, because that might explain some of the idea of, because I'm sure if anyone's like a type 6 on the Enneagram, a troubleshooter like me, they're always looking for the problem My problem is if I give this melatonin and it's not nighttime, what am I doing to sleep in chronobiology?
Right.
But what if it has a paracrine effect just in the gut? Because we know now there's a bunch of cool stuff happening in the gut. The enterochromaffin cells, which release hundreds to thousands of times more melatonin than the pineal gland. So,
and that's the thing. The fact that it's even produced beyond the pineal gland means that it, and the fact that it has this effect on immunomodulation, has antioxidant properties, There's obviously receptors in the gut where it can work locally. It's found in the retina. It's found in the bile. It's found in like bone marrow. You know what I mean? It's true. It might be like taking it during the day. It doesn't mean it's going to be a sedative and make you fall asleep. It might just be redirected in how it's used in the body at dosing during daylight hours.
I think it further supports my suspicions that a slow release one might be more what we're looking for when we're going for the non-sleep
and I think
too.
I think that it doesn't mean that everybody should be taking melatonin during the day to try to amplify these things. I think we still have to just go back to those core values. Optimize your sleep-wake cycle, because if you can encourage natural melatonin production, your body is going to reap the benefits of that. And if I go back to like Jack Kruse and stuff, he was like, I don't like to give things that the body should naturally make. So if you can give it more of the precursors to make it itself, like tart cherry juice. And I saw you had a list of things that are going to help with like melatonin precursors of like L-tryptophan that then makes serotonin, that then makes melatonin, like white meat, dairy, fish, eggs, nuts. Tart cherry juice is another one. There's a whole bunch of those things that can then support the natural production of melatonin and get your sleep-wake cycle in rhythm. See the sunlight during the day, dim the lights at night, encourage your body to just make this for itself. And a lot of repair happens while we're sleeping. So the repair might be beyond pineal gland sleep. That melatonin might be released even in more than one area to affect bone marrow, immune, gut healing. A lot of repair happens during your sleep. But like, I cannot stress that enough. So this I think without getting too ahead of ourselves and jumping at stuff, like if you're working with someone for cancer care, then the naturopath might be well versed on how to use melatonin to support the immune system for that specific condition, for that specific type of cancer as well. And that's where I would probably look into the more specific dosing for more specific cases. But otherwise, I would say the general population probably just needs to like work on their sleep-wake cycle.
How are you going to go wrong doing that, right?
You're never going to go wrong with that. I want to highlight one more thing about the benefits of melatonin. There was a really interesting article. It's a PubMed article, and they literally, this is an excerpt from it. It says, uncommonly effective in reducing oxidative stress under a remarkably large number of circumstances. That's the effect of melatonin as an antioxidant. It does it through a variety of means. It can direct detoxification of reactive oxygen species. It can and reactive nitrogen species. It can and indirectly, both directly and indirectly, and it can also stimulate antioxidant enzymes. While also suppressing the activity of pro-oxidant enzymes, because there's always a balance in our body. It can also maybe chelate certain metals to reduce the oxidative damage that would otherwise be done by them. High concentrations of melatonin have been found in the mitochondria. So that's another area that we're going to have high concentrations of melatonin. And apparently, they said it likely aids in the capacity to resist oxidative stress and cellular apoptosis by being in the mitochondria. And there's credible evidence, according to this article, that says it should be classified as a mitochondrial targeted antioxidant, according to this article, because it's so concentrated in the mitochondria. It also has the capacity to prevent oxidative damage and the associated physiological issues that would otherwise occur in a number of experiments with ischemia or reperfusion, with hypoxia or reoxygenation studies, especially with the brain, with strokes, with heart disease, heart attacks, things like that. And it can also reduce the toxicity of noxious prescription drugs or drug abuse, with the damage that could be caused from that because of its antioxidant effect. This was all based on a very specific study that was looking at like a meta-analysis of all these different articles about its antioxidant effects. But I thought that was pretty remarkable. And that they basically say under a large number of circumstances, it is a highly remarkable antioxidant. So that's another thing that melatonin really shines at, which is cool.
Yeah. I mean, now you got something that works as a sort of independently as a biomolecule antioxidant, reacting with, I'm assuming, certain types of reactive oxygen species. It's paracrine, non-receptor dependent, and it's also receptor dependent. It's made in bacteria, it's made in plants, it's secreted according to the sun that hits your retina, but it's also secreted. That's from the pineal gland, but it's also secreted in a non sun related pattern postprandial from your enterochromaffin cells. Like
it's wild. It increases
big,
glutathione
big
production. It's in bone marrow. It increases like blood cell production. It regulates your immune system. It can upregulate killer cells to reduce like abnormal cellular growth and damaged cells. Like it's pretty freaking incredible.
It is. And so I guess as we do these episodes on melatonin, I'm creeping a little bit closer to like some form of knowledge with it. But at this point, I think if I find someone has upper GI issues, H. pylori gastritis, which is, by the way, half of you listening.
That's right.
Wherever you are. So I think what I would do is recommend it postprandially, so after eating, because that mimics normally what's going on in physiology, healthy physiology. And then this was really cool. This is a bit more like mechanistic thinking, which I dabble with. It's not my forte, but I do think it's really interesting to know mechanisms. And then maybe we can understand different strategies to go about it. So acetyl coenzyme A, or acetyl-CoA, is the rate limiting step for this is a mouthful here. Aryl alkylamine N-acetyltransferase, AANAT. And that is the enzyme that is making melatonin in the enterochromaffin cells. So there may be a therapeutic opportunity here to try pantethine, which is a derivative of B5 acetyl-CoA, or vitamin B5 or acetyl-CoA supportive enzymes, or sorry, acetyl-CoA supporting supplements with your food, because then you will now make what is the rate limiting step. You'll have enough of the rate limiting step acetyl-CoA to make the melatonin. So I did start to go down the rabbit hole a bit on that, and I didn't come out yet. I'm still in there.
Still in there burrowing away.
I don't use a lot of B5 and stuff like that in practice, because I find them because they affect everything. It's hard to know what they affect, in a way.
I know B vitamins are so crucial. I often give like a good B complex as like, especially if someone's just adrenally fatigued, I'm just like, you could probably benefit from a boost of all of these things, because it's going to be multifocal, and something that has choline, because my love of bile. Yeah, I find that for me, with the demographic that I'm seeing, it's probably more like B6 or B complex rather than B5 specific, but B5 does shine. And I think I've kind of forgotten about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I have
they're
too.
all
And
good.
I mean, yeah, they are. And so it's, as I focus more and more, I would say, on the gut and maybe the stomach in particular. I'll update when I know more about this. It's a compound which is got energetic potential. So if there are cell processes which are energy deficient, especially in this acetyl-CoA, maybe they will be very benefited greatly by trying this. And I'll comment on this in the future.
Cool.
For the gut specifically, because my God, we got to do with, I'm signing us up again for another update on melatonin. Okay. They're going to be sick of it. We're going to put them to sleep. They won't need any melatonin. They'll go to sleep.
Nice segue to lead us out there.
Yeah.
Knocked it out of the park there with that one. All right, guys, that was a little update about melatonin then, and just its alternative benefits, not alternative, but extra benefits for the system beyond sleep, because we always just associate it with sleep, but it's so much more, and it's pretty awesome.